Good evening. This is Randy Osborne, and welcome to another live stream broadcast of Florida Government Watch. This is the second of a 5-part series on reading, writing, and Islam, the Islamic influence in American education. I had mentioned last week that there are 3 federal laws that prohibit the federal government involvement in creating a curriculum as well as other issues. I am going to read some excerpts from those laws. The first one I'm going to identify is the General Education Provisions Act. And this is what it says. No provision of any applicable program shall be construed to authorize any department, agency, officer, or employee of the United States to exercise any direction, supervision, or control of the curriculum, program of instruction, administration, personnel of any educational instruction, school or school system, or over the selection of library resources, textbooks, or other printed or published instructional materials by any educational assignment or transportation of students or teachers in order to overcome racial imbalances. We're talking about another issue. Then the next one is the Department of Education Organizational Act of 1979. This is the actual act that actually created the Department of Education, Federal Department of Education. And basically what it says is parents have the primary responsibility for the education of their children. And states, localities, and private institutions have the primary responsibility for supporting that parental role. Then it goes on to say this: in our federal system, the primary public responsibility for education is reserved respectively to the states and to the local school systems and other instrumentalities of the states. And then the last one is the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. And just to give you a synopsis, within this act, it basically prohibits the federal government from establishing any type of a national curriculum or being involved in any way to influence curriculum in reference to education. Last week I played a clip of Tucker Carlson discussing an issue that exposed PBS in the United States Department of Education using Islamic school curriculum and lessons for schools. PBS basically designed the curriculum and the Department of Education funded it. Martin Moyer was the guest on that show. Well, PolitiFact, in their wisdom, and please note that was sarcasm, has come out and said his statements are false. So we're going to go into an in-depth conversation about what is being taught, and you decide whether this is education or indoctrination. I have a special guest on the phone, and it is Martin Moyer of the Christian Action Network. He has done extensive research in U.S. homegrown radical Islam, as well as some other social conservative issues that we face. Martin, thank you for being on this important broadcast. PolitiFact has come out with a report and has stated that PBS Access Islam is mere education and is not indoctrination. Martin, what would you have to respond to that?
Access Islam, it does not examine Islam in a critical format. It is nothing more than a lesson plan on how to become a Muslim and to act like a Muslim. In addition, PolitiFact even admits in their article that Access Islam is a real program for school teachers looking to offer lesson plans on the religion of Islam. Now, if you was to substitute that and say that Access Christianity is a real program for teachers looking to offer lesson plans on the religion of Christianity, this same PolitiFact would be making the argument that they are indoctrinating children rather than educating children. So when you look at the program, PolitiFact is trying to make the case that if a school teacher went and taught children how to pray as a Christian, that would be education. We know they would not be saying that is education. If PolitiFact looked at a program called Access Christianity and students were asked to read Bible scriptures and then interpret those Bible scriptures and then explain how they use those Bible scriptures in their everyday life, they would certainly be claiming this is indoctrination. However, in Access Islam, that's exactly what students are asked to do. They're asked to read verses from the Quran, they're asked to interpret those verses, and then they're asked to explain how Muslims use those verses in their everyday life. Now, let me also add this, Randy, that for a teacher to be able to do this would almost mean that teacher would have to be a scholar in Islam. What teacher can possibly grade a student on their interpretation of what a Quranic verse means and how it should be properly used in their everyday life? Are teachers qualified to grade students on answering questions like that? Now, if they are in a madrasa, if they were in an Islamic school, that would be acceptable. That would be fine. You have a teacher there who probably would be qualified on the proper interpretation of these things, but not a public school teacher. Can a school teacher possibly look at verses in the Bible and grade students on their interpretation of those verses? You know what would happen if that was the case. So, look, this is clearly indoctrination. It does not offer any critical aspect of Islam whatsoever in these 10 lesson plans. It simply tells the students what the teacher and what the Islamic authors of this program want you to know and think. And there are no essays for students to write saying, well, here are my objections and here's what I find false about this religion or this particular practice.
Good point. And basically what you're saying is if a teacher that was teaching on Christianity, I mean, they're not going to, first of all, open the Bible and go verse by verse. In fact, that would be such a taboo in America's school systems today. But going further than that, what you're saying is, I mean, even if a teacher was to teach a Bible class to that level, I mean, they would have to have some level of seminary experience or some level of Bible school experience to be able to go to that level to discuss interpretations of what the Scripture says.
Well, Randy, look at all the divisions in Christianity alone between Protestants, Methodists, Catholics, Episcopalians, etc., who have different interpretations of the Bible. If you like a particular interpretation, then you go to that church. But for a school teacher to be put in an authoritative position in a classroom and say, I'm going to grade you on this particular interpretation of a Bible verse, you know that many Christian churches out there would be objecting to a teacher telling a student how to interpret a biblical verse. Well, the same thing would go with the Quran. There are many different interpretations out there of how a verse in the Quran should be interpreted, and not only interpreted, but employed in your daily life. What sets the school teacher up with such authority that somehow the teacher knows and can grade you on that proper answer? How, again, is this not anything more than a Sunday school lesson plan on Islam and an indoctrination class?
Here's another thing, Martin, that they're addressing. First of all, they basically say they address a particular county in Florida, which is not really relevant because it's available. What they have done, PBS has actually has a Access Islam Florida site. It's specifically to match the Florida standards. So they have gone to great depth and great length to match those with the Florida standards. The other thing that I've noticed that they've done here, PolitiFact, they come out and they say, well, they're not forcing anybody to teach this. The schools have the right to teach it if they want to, if they so choose. And what would be your argument to that? I mean, it's like, well, we're not forcing anybody to do it. We're just making it available.
Sure, but forcing the kids to do it, isn't that the important thing here? A teacher can employ this program at the will of the teacher. They can download it from PBS and they can use it in their classroom. But there's no opt-out that's being offered for the students in these classes that have to go through these lesson plans. So which is more important here, whether the state says a teacher can opt out using it or whether the student can opt out? And even if the student could opt out, you would still, in the public schools, not have something called Access Christianity, where students can opt out of a social studies class, because while today the teacher is teaching you how to do a Christian prayer, look, it just wouldn't happen. But not only are these students being taught how to pray as a Muslim and to watch a video on the proper way to pray as a Muslim, they are then graded on how a Muslim prays. They are graded on things as to what do Muslims say when they pray. They are even graded on what does a Muslim prayer movement look like. Now, this is just not public school material, and you know it, I know it, America knows it, and look, for these educators to look you square in the face and say, we're just educating students on how Muslims pray and what the things they say when they pray, what the scriptures are that they read and what the interpretations of those scriptures are, that's just a bold-faced lie. They know it because they would not tolerate the same thing going on if Christianity was presented in the same format.
Another thing, Martin, that they've done, they've brought in what alleged 4 experts, and they have, this is PolitiFact now, and they have identified 4 experts, and all 4 experts, of course, say this is completely unfounded. One of the experts works for NPR, and she has actually written about Islam, and it's a very Islamic book that she's written. Another one is a guy by the name of Martin Fowler, and this is what he says. I have kind of done a little research on him, and again, it is a very pro-Islamic organization that he works for, and they do it under the auspices of, well, the organization, the reason that we have this organization is because Muslims are being persecuted in the United States. So we have these organizations to better educate the public on Islam, and it's not really a radical religion, is basically what their whole premise of their organizations are. But this is what one of them says about the examples of the lessons. He says it's not preaching or promoting Islam over other faiths. And they go on to say that indoctrination is a motivation of having children choose a faith over another. He says these lessons are not doing that as such. And how would you respond to that?
Well, he's an expert, right? So, who am I then? But
he's an expert. He's an expert because PolitiFact said he was an expert. Okay.
The correct definition of indoctrination is to present a group or an idea that where critical opinion is not allowed. That is what indoctrination is. And if he wants to interpret indoctrination to be something different, then I guess he's welcome to do that. If people want to believe this version, then believe it. But to say that they're not pushing Islam over another religion, how can that be true when one of the lesson plans requires children to make a poster of the 5 pillars of Islam? So here these children are, they're making posters to put not only in their classroom, but they are instructed to put it throughout the school to educate other children about Islam. And everybody who understands what the 5 pillars are know that the very first pillar is how to become a Muslim. Can you imagine if those same students were asked to draw a picture of the cross and to hang that in the classroom and put it on the hallways throughout the school to better educate other students on Christianity? Look, they're not only trying to convert children into Islam, they're trying to make them evangelists for Islam, because that's what you do when you start making posters in your classroom and you put it up there throughout the rest of the school. You are now evangelizing for a particular religion. There is no alternate program that the Department of Education has released where, well, children are also asked to put a picture of the cross up there with an explanation of how to become a Christian, as is this program, which says, no, make a poster of the pillars of Islam with an explanation of how to become a Muslim. So this is clear to everybody. And common sense people will understand this, regardless of experts. Besides, who listens to experts anyway? People can use their own judgment. That's why God gave them their own brain and their own intelligence and their own abilities to make a reasonable decision on choices that are available out there to select from. And I have confidence in the American people that if they look at this program, they're going to know that this is indoctrination. It's an attempt to convert children to Islam and also an attempt to make them evangelists for Islam.
Martin, the next question I have is what can the public do? I mean, first of all, PBS is partially funded by the United States government. In addition to that, they have obtained a grant to do this. And one of the claims is, well, this grant was obtained under a Republican president. I mean, that was one of the other arguments. Like, who's arguing that? Who cares? Why is that an issue? But what can the public do to address this kind of stuff? I mean, this is going on in some way, shape, or form across the United States in different school systems. It has happened all across the state of Florida. It's happened nationwide that different types of teachings on this that is more of an indoctrination than an educational purposes is being done. What would you suggest that the public can do to help stop this kind of nonsense going on?
Well, first, they can write the Department of Education, Betsy DeVos, and ask her to declare it that this program, which has been in the schools for probably a decade and a half now, and in various forms, to declare it as being unconstitutional and withdraw the program. But look, we sent a letter to the Department of Education. I think it's been 45 days or so. And we gave them 60 days to make that statement and to pull the program with the threat of a lawsuit if they do not. So far, none of these cases where Islam and its indoctrination that's going on in the public schools has gone to court and had a judge rule on it. I can't think of any better case than this federal program, because then it will approach schools nationwide rather than a state-specific program.
Right.
So I think that this is a very good lawsuit that we're going to file. I think it's easily winnable. I don't think a judge can take very long at all looking over the facts of this case, reading through the program, and not also understand that this is not public school material.
There's no question about this, and beyond anything else, the federal government has no business being involved in this. When the Department of Education was formed, Department of Education Organizational Act of 1979 very, very clearly states that the primary purpose was to reserve education to the local school systems, and that the federal government was not to get involved in any way, shape, or form in the curriculum, in the instruction of any way of education of our children. And then you have the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which is an act that continues being reinstated annually, just about. And it's very clear that it prohibits the federal government from creating a curriculum of any national level. It's very, very explicit on that. So I think that from a legal standpoint, I think that issue, and obviously the one that about the separation of church and state, which has gone awry, in my opinion, are two very, very clear issues that I think that the government has definitely overstepped their bounds on.
Yeah, I think you're right on both cases. And look, let me just read to you a sentence out of this program that's directed toward kids. Explore and understand the basic beliefs of Islam, as well as the 5 pillars that guide Muslims in their daily life, belief, worship, fasting, almsgiving, and pilgrimage. Does this not sound like something you should be learning at your church or in a mosque? This does not sound like something when you tell students to understand the belief of Muslims that this is public school education. It says that children will focus on learning about the core duties of Muslims. So how is this not teaching religion? And who is that teacher that's supposed to explain the core duties of being a Muslim, as if you had a teacher explain what the core duties would be of being a Christian? There are many different interpretations out there about what those core duties should be. This is making a teacher a religious expert, authority, and being able to have the ability to grade a student on what that teacher believes, as opposed to what a student may understand from what his parents taught that child.
Unbelievable. Amazing. Martin, what you have a website. It's christianaction.org, christianaction.org. And what can the public do to help in the event that you do have to pursue this and you all do get involved in some type of a lawsuit? What can they do to help you get involved in that?
Well, what I would like them to do right now is visit our website and look at the several videos we have up there about this program. Don't take our word for it. The evidence is up there. We have articles that explain what's in this program. We have samples that people can look at that students are given under this program, and we have videos. One of the more interesting ones is that this program asks students to watch 5 different videos on Islam and how you should pray, how you should make a pilgrimage to Mecca, how you should fast, and how you give alms, and all the other duties that they claim are responsible for your responsibility as being a Muslim. So we went through all of those videos and we shortened them down. We took out some of the key things that we find very objectionable that students are being told. Now, one of those things is that the students are going to look at the life of one particular Muslim who converted from Christianity to Islam. Now, this is telling kids it's okay to convert from Christianity to Islam. Then that man looks at the student straight in the face and says, Allah is the one true God. Submit yourself to Allah. So, can you imagine someone else showing a video to classmates and saying that Jesus is the Son of God? Submit yourself to Jesus in a classroom setting. So we have that on these videos, and I encourage people to take a look at them.
Great. Okay, that's christianaction.org. That's christianaction.org. And that's Martin Moyer. And Martin, I really appreciate you being on and help clarifying this. This is an extremely important issue. I had mentioned in the last broadcast about addressing some Islamic textbooks in the school systems, and it is an indoctrination. And if we don't get control of this now, we are going to lose our children in this battle. So again, I appreciate you being on. Thank you for what you're doing. That's christianaction.org and Martin Moyer. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Randy.
Again, it is vitally important that you, the citizens. Get involved. Contact your local schools, your local school boards, and ask if Access Islam is being used in your local school system. Contact your state and federal representatives and ask them why the federal government is funding religious indoctrination in public schools. The job is up to you, and you can make a difference. On the next broadcast, we'll be on Thursday, June the 1st. We're skipping next week. It's June the 1st at 8 p.m. This is Randy Osborne with Florida Government Watch. Thank you for watching and signing off, and have a great evening, and God bless.